Welcome to Claed Entertainment, where you can find some of your favorite movie recaps. Spoilers ahead. Please sit back and enjoy.
A shipment of electronics is stolen from a moving truck in the first scene of the film by a group of stunt drivers led by a racer wearing a helmet who is accompanied by 3 other stunt drivers driving black Honda Civic coupes. Brian O'Connor is a covert police officer who is attempting to join the gang led by Dominic Toretto, who are suspected of committing the thefts. O'Connor drives supercharged automobiles as he goes about his mission. He begins by going to Dominic's cafe, where he strikes up a discussion with Dominic's younger sister Mia and makes an effort to gain Dominic's gang's trust by selling performance equipment to them. A brawl breaks out as a direct result of Vince's envy. His girlfriend Letty asks Dom to stop the two of them, and Dom complies despite the fact that he threatens to have Brian fired. That evening, racers get together for some competitive street racing. After meeting Hector, Brian then waits for Dom with Hector. Jesse, Dom's mechanic, examines the condition of Brian's vehicle when the latter offers it as a wager. The spectators are arranged in a line down each street, providing illumination. Together with Johnny Tran and Edwin, Brian and Dom compete in the race. Dom comes out on top, demonstrating to Brian that he has better timing and driving skills. After picking up a police alert on the scanner, the racers decide to make a break for it. Dom abandons his vehicle and leaves on foot, with Brian assisting him as he makes his way away. Dom has done his homework on Brian, obtaining his cover narrative in the process. But as they are conversing, they are encircled by Chinese motorcyclists armed with users who lead them to an empty lot. Johnny Tran, the boss of this group, expresses his admiration for Brian's automobile and mentions a race that will take place in the desert the following month. After being shot at by him and his thugs, Brian's automobile detonates due to the nitric oxide sustainer that was inside. When we return to Dom's place, we find that he is hosting a party. Dom rants at his crew, telling them that Brian is the only one that helped him out of the whole group. Vince is distraught since Brian has returned, and Mia has ended their relationship as a result. The following day, Brian reports to a police safe house where he is briefed on the situation by his superior, Sergeant Tanner. Because of the thefts, truck drivers are becoming increasingly anxious, and the FBI is now getting involved. They kept hearing that the robberies were committed with modified Honda Civics. Late on the same day, Brian delivers Dom a damaged Toyota Supra that has a potent engine, and the two of them begin working on it in Dom's workshop. Mia continues to make Vince laugh despite the fact that his anger against Dom's friendship with Brian has not subsided. The next day, Hector made a purchase from Brian involving Honda Civic components, and Brian became suspicious as a result. He gets caught by Vince and Dom after breaking into Hector's garage since they were following him. Brian manages to convince them that he is gathering intelligence on the other racers in preparation for race wars the following month. Dom is the one who suggests breaking into Tran's garage, and despite Vince's misgivings, Vince goes along with it. Brian notices suspected stolen stuff. As Dom, Brian, and Vince watch Tran and his thugs torment the local fenced head about the stolen engines after their arrival, Tran and his minions arrive. Brian reveals this information to the FBI, but he is hesitant to move in on Tran until they have additional proof in their possession. His employer believes that Brian is becoming too native in his treatment of Toretto and feels that he is being too lenient with him. The following day, Dom invites Brian into his confidence and shows him his supercharged 1970 Dodge Charger, which is a car that he never really drives. Dom considers it to have an excessive amount of power. During dinner, Brian and Mia have a conversation about Dom, and then Mia demonstrates her driving talents for Brian. At the same time, another heist is now taking place, and Brian receives a call from his supervisor informing him that they would be moving in on Tran the next morning. The raid is carried out with Brian hiding his identity by donning a hood to prevent being recognized, but Tran's group is let free due to a lack of proof because the questionable items were bought. Tanner warns Brian not to fall in love with Mia and informs him that Dominic is the next suspect in the investigation. The following day, Brian and Dom go for a drive in the reconstructed Supra, and they easily beat a Ferrari. During lunch, Brian asks Dom if he may be a part of his next work, but Dom says that first he wants to see how well Brian does in race wars. The conflict known as race wars kicks off in the midst of a desert. Letty comes out on top, but Jess's car is wrecked by Tran and he refuses to compensate him. As a result of the police raid on Dom's apartment the day before, Tran accuses Dom of being an informer, which leads to a fight breaking out between the two of them. That evening, Mia is aggravated with Dom since he is definitely going on another heist, which reveals that Dom and his group are, in fact, the hijackers who Brian has been attempting to catch all along. Mia is unhappy with Dom because he's going on another robbery. Brian admits that he is an undercover police officer and begs Mia for assistance in warning Dom about the truck drivers arming themselves and the FBI activities. Brian requests that a search be conducted on Dom's mobile phone. Although Letty is anxious about the next work, they decide to go ahead and do it anyhow. In the most exciting moment of the story, Dom and his crew don their disguises and speed out to pull off another carjacking. When Vince hops atop the trucker opens fire on him, marking the beginning of the robbery's downward spiral. When Letty's automobile goes off the road, Leon is there to save her. While the truck driver is reloading his shotgun, Brian comes on the scene and decides to put his life in danger to save Vince. When Dom arrives, he overhears Brian describing himself as a law enforcement officer while placing a call for a medical helicopter. Dom is taken aback, but attending to Vince's needs comes first. After Vince has been stabilized, Dom walks away angrily and Mia soon follows. Brain confronts Dom once they are both back at Dom's place. After Jesse has returned, Tram kills him in a drive-by shooting. Brian gives pursuit and Dom climbs in the Charger to join him in his pursuit of the thief. By stopping in front of one of the motorbikes, Dom forces the goon to crash into an open field, whereupon Tran is shot by Brian. When Brian spots Dom running away, he gives chase in his Supra. They compete, and throughout the race, Dom's car starts to break down due to the tremendous torque in the motor. They are able to complete the race, but Dom is injured when he collides with a truck that is exiting a side street. The Charger has been involved in an accident, and Dom has sustained injuries. Dom manages to get away just as Brian hands him the keys to his car, and distant sirens of police cars can be heard.
As a result of Brian O'Connor's abandonment to keep Dominic Toretto in custody, the former police officer is currently on the run. He wants to start over, so he relocates to Miami. Here, he makes new friends like Tej Parker, who used to compete in street races, Jimmy, who is well known in the automotive tuning community, and Suki, who is also a street racer. O'Connor now goes by the street name Bullet, and he uses the racing skills he acquired while he was a member of Toretto's team, which has since disbanded, to compete against other street racers in high-stakes races in order to win money. One night, after he has won a race, he is apprehended by U.S. Customs agents after the fictitious harpoon-like electronic disruption device used by U.S. Customs agent Markham is able to render his vehicle inoperable. This occurs the night after the race. After his arrest, he is brought before Special Agent Bilkins, who offers him a deal. If he agrees to participate in a mission, his previous convictions will be expunged from his record. If he refuses, however, his record will remain intact. O'Connor is supposed to work alongside another officer, but he has a specific request to work alongside a different officer instead. After that, O'Connor and Bilkins head to Barstow, California, where O'Connor meets up with his childhood friend and former criminal Roman Pierce to propose the deal to him. Together, they are tasked with carrying out a mission that requires them to pose as street racers in order to assist a South American Argentine drug lord named Carter Verón. They will be assisted in this endeavor by Monica Fuentes, an undercover customs officer for the United States who has developed a romantic relationship with Verón. Pierce and O'Connor are the first ones to reach Verón's impounded Ferrari at the boat dock, where the package is located, so they win the audition race that Verón has organized, which is a highly charged competition. Pierce and O'Connor take possession of the package. They are, however, cut off by Markham, who arrives on the scene after being tipped off by the GPS in their vehicles, assuming that they were attempting to abandon the race. This causes all of the other racers to flee the area as quickly as they can. In spite of O'Connor's warning, Pierce shoots Markham with a gun, which disables his unit. After that, he and O'Connor run away. After a victorious return to Verón's compound, they are ushered inside for a continuation of their conversation with Verón. Verón explains that the boat dock belongs to him, and that the purpose of the audition was to determine who would be capable of managing a job for him. He describes the work as follows: "Drive the package to the quays, and I will personally hand over 100 guineas at the finish line. Pierce has proposed that the prize money be increased to $100,000 so that it can be shared with O'Connor. Verone suggests that they continue their conversation later that night at his nightclub, where they can go into greater detail. After O'Connor and Pierce have returned to Markham, he reprimands them for their attempt to flee, but O'Connor says that Markham came dangerously close to revealing their identity. Markham warns them both that he will file charges against them unless they provide information about Verone and realize that Monica's cover may be in danger. The two are given permission to continue working on the case, despite the fact that O'Connor has a sneaking suspicion that they are in deep trouble and that Verone will not keep his word once the job is finished, possibly getting rid of them in the process. O'Connor and Pierce win Corpy's 1969 Yenko Camaro and Darden's 1970 Challenger RT respectively. They plan a workaround that requires 2 additional new cars and ask Tej to arrange a race for Pink Slips, with 2 of the racers from the audition race earlier in the movie. O'Connor and Pierce do as they are told and make their way to Verone's nightclub, where they finally make his acquaintance. He then leads them into the VIP lounge, where Verone begins to persuade a police detective named Whitworth to keep the local police away from O'Connor and Pierce so that they can transport the money. Verone puts Whitworth through agonizing pain in order to force him to carry out his orders. He places a large rat on Whitworth's chest and covers it with a champagne bucket. Then, he uses a blowtorch to make the rat scratch and bite Whitworth as it tries to escape the heat. The following morning, they get in their Mitsubishis and drive off to complete the mission. They have Verone's money stashed in the trunks of their cars, and 2 of Verone's henchmen are riding along with them. During the process of transporting Verone's money, the crooked detective Whitworth calls for the assistance of a large number of police units that he has standing by nearby. Later on, there is a chase that ends with an arrival of a police helicopter and 2 police SWAT officers who use ESD on the suspects. Pierce is able to avoid the harpoon, but O'Connor's car is hit, which causes the electronics in the car and the car itself to begin to shut down gradually. Brian courageously removes the ESD hook and throws it on a police car, which causes the car to lose control and buys them some time by distracting the officers. They directed law enforcement to an apartment complex. O'Connor and Pierce's street racer friends, including Slapjack and Orange Julius, create a scramble diversion so that O'Connor and Pierce can sneak away and continue their mission even though the police have surrounded the front of the complex. After being driven out of the garage for the first time were 4 brand new Dodge Rams, which were used to move the police cars out of the way. After that, hundreds of cars left, including O'Connor and Pierce. The police forces quickly spot the Mitsubishis and corner them at a coast stop when they reappear, but it is revealed that Tej and Suki are driving them, while O'Connor and Pierce have switched to the Yenko and Challenger that they won from the previous race. They are now free to proceed with the next stage of their plan, having successfully evaded the authorities. O'Connor and Pierce went their separate ways to meet at the predetermined location. Pierce quickly gets rid of the Verone's thug that was riding with him, and he and Jimmy meet at the location that was previously agreed upon. Pierce is informed by O'Connor that the plan has been altered after Jimmy expresses concern over the fact that he is the only one who has arrived. In the meantime, O'Connor is instructed by the thug that is accompanying Verone to not proceed to the airfield that they believe to be the destination, but rather to proceed to a boat dock. Upon O'Connor's arrival, the first thing that happens is that he is questioned at gunpoint about where Pierce and the other half of the money is. When Monica made the mistake of telling U.S. Customs agents about Verone's plan to flee the country via a remote airfield, Verone later admitted that he was aware that Monica was working as an undercover agent for the United States Customs Service. Markham has SWAT forces that are preparing to storm Verone's private jet, which they believe he will be escaping in, but when they get there, they only find a decoy and discover that they, too, have been played. While Verone and his men leave, O'Connor is sent away with his men to be executed as Verone had predicted earlier. Pierce arrives just in time to ram the van that Verone's henchmen are traveling in, and just as O'Connor is about to be killed, he fights the thug in his Camaro, while Pierce joins in the fight shortly afterward. O'Connor's life is saved. Before sending Monica downstairs on his yacht, Verone reprimands Monica for her treachery and calls her out on it. After getting into the Camaro, O'Connor and Pierce come up with a strategy to rescue Monica from Verone. Their plan involves driving the Camaro off of a nearby ramp and landing on the top of the yacht. They are successful, but they come dangerously close to being killed by Verone, who pumps his shotgun despite not being pinned from the impact. O'Connor, who had earlier taken the gun from the other thug, fires at Verone with the gun he had taken from him. O'Connor and Pierce are relieved that they have been successful in completing their mission because Monica is able to flee from the situation and takes Verone's shotgun before he can retaliate. O'Connor's Camaro is searched, and Verone is apprehended. Half of the duffel bags that contained Verone's drug money were found inside the vehicle. Pierce reluctantly takes the other half out of his Challenger in exchange for Markham's acceptance of their agreement to have their records cleaned, but Markham agrees to the deal. They talk to Monica and Bilkins, who say that they will get Suki and Tej released and finish their work together before they part ways with the two of them. When asked how they could afford it, O'Connor and Pierce both secretly confess to each other that they have taken some of the money from the bags in the past. O'Connor and Pierce plan to continue remaining in Miami, where they could open a garage.
Sean Boswell, a young guy with a gift for working on automobiles, has made a career out of getting into trouble throughout his life. Because he only has one parent, his single mother has been required to move to a new city with him. Whenever his issues at school or with the authorities in his community reached a certain threshold, one day, Sean ends up flirting with the girlfriend of the school quarterback, which results in a baseball being thrown into Sean's rear window right at the moment when Sean is attempting to escape confrontation after criticizing him. After the damage was done to Sean's vehicle, he got out, pulled out a wrench, and threatened to get into a fight. Cindy, who is riding shotgun in a Dodge Viper driven by the quarterback, and Sean, who is driving a 1971 Monte Carlo, decide to engage in a duel to see who will win the girlfriend. After a while, things go from bad to worse during the race as Sean crashes into several houses that are in the process of being built, and the quarterback loses control of his vehicle. Both parties end up needing medical attention at the police station. The girlfriend is extremely upset with both of them, and the incident nearly results in Sean being arrested. Sean's mother, who does not want to deal with moving again, decides to send her son to Tokyo to live with his father, who is an officer in the United States Navy stationed in Japan. As soon as they arrived in Tokyo, Sean's father gave him a stern warning. If he takes part in any races, he would be extradited back to the United States and sentenced to prison there. The following morning, Sean is surprised to find out that he has been enrolled in a prestigious private school in Tokyo. Immediately following class at lunch, Sean runs across Twinkie, another American, who is in the business of selling previously owned items to their Japanese peers. Twinkie exposes Sean to the world of drift racing by taking him to a drift car park that is now hosting a race party. This occurs after Sean observes that Twinkie possesses a number of commodities that are associated with automobiles. Soon after, Sean comes face to face with Takashi, also known as the Drift King of Tokyo, as well as Han, a close friend of Takashi's who was born and raised in the United States. Takashi overhears Sean chatting to Neela, Takashi's girlfriend, and advises Sean to back off. When Sean hears this, he challenges Takashi to a race using the Nissan Silvia that Han has borrowed from him. Sean's lack of skill with drift racing causes Han's car to be ruined, and Takashi ends up winning the race with his Nissan 350Z. In response, Han tells Sean that he is unable to leave Tokyo and that he must work for him to repay the car. After the race, Sean knows that he has no choice except to change his appearance. Soon after, he finds out that Han is working with Takashi in some sort of business arrangement. Han comes to be Sean's friend and mentor, taking him under his wing to instruct him on how to drift and providing him with some financial assistance. After suffering defeat at the hands of Sean in his 350Z, Morimoto, a friend of Takashi's who also competes in the drift scene, became enraged after losing to Sean in his Mitsubishi Lancer. Slowly but surely, Sean built a name for himself in the drift community by gradually improving and eventually beating Morimoto. Sean maintains his training and strikes up a friendship with Neela, who is also enrolled in the same school as Sean. She admits that in the past she, like Sean, was regarded as an outsider in Japan because she was not a native of that country. She reveals that after the death of her mother, she and Takashi raised themselves together. Takashi gives Scene a beating and tells him to keep away from Neela after spotting him with her and learning about the time they spent together. After viewing the marks on Scene's body, Neela storms off to join Scene, much to Takashi's consternation. Takashi's uncle Kamata, who is a high-ranking member of the Yakuza, informed him that there is an inconsistency in the account books and that cash flow was not functioning properly. The conversation continues with Kamata informing Takashi that Han must have been defrauding them of their money. One evening, Takashi confronts Han and his companions with this disparity, and Han, Scene, and Neela escape just in time to avoid being threatened with a gun by Takashi. In order to provide a distraction for Scene and Neela to get into Scene's car and Han to get into his car as they flee, Twinkie sneaks around to the back of the building and closes the shutter doors. Suddenly, a high-speed automobile pursuit breaks out through the streets of Tokyo, with Takashi pursuing Han and Morimoto pursuing Scene. Morimoto makes an attempt to kill Scene, but he is confronted by another vehicle that is traveling in the same lane as him. Scene makes an effort to avoid the oncoming vehicle by switching lanes, but he ends up crashing with another vehicle, which likely results in Morimoto's death. When Takashi saw Morimoto's automobile involved in a multi-car collision, he became upset for his friend and decided to leave him behind in order to catch up to Scene. After Han slowed down and gave Scene the opportunity to take the lead, which allowed Han to deal with Takashi, he too attempted to disrupt Scene's plans, but he was unsuccessful. The pursuit continues into the heart of Tokyo, where Scene is warned by Neela that he is about to enter a crowded area of the city. The audience is quickly given the cue to move as Scene honks his horn to their attention. Amidst the chaos, he pivots and both Takashi and Han immediately followed his lead. During the entirety of the pursuit, Takashi fires shots at Han, and Han constantly ducks and weaves to avoid getting hit. Han is successful in knocking Takashi out of control, but after that, he drives through a junction where he is rear-ended by Deckard Shaw's Mercedes, which causes Han's car to tip over. As a result of the collision, gasoline begins to pour from the vehicle, while Han is unable to move due to the injuries he incurred. Just then, Scene becomes aware of the situation, and a moment later, a truck hits the back of his own vehicle. Scene and Neela get out of the car, and just as they are about to approach Han's wreckage, an explosion occurs as a consequence of leaking gasoline from the vehicle reaching a nearby fire. This explosion causes a rupture in the nitrous tank, which leads to an even larger explosion that ultimately claims Han's life. As they get on the subway to leave, a devastated Neela pulls Scene away from her. After returning to the home of Scene's father, Scene and Neela are confronted by Takashi, who is attempting to abduct Neela, and he threatens Scene with a gun. However, Scene's father suddenly emerges and does the same thing to Takashi with his own gun. Neela leaves voluntarily with Takashi in order to prevent any future mishaps, and Takashi teases Scene by saying that he would deal with Scene away from Scene's father. The fact that Scene's father is aware of the situation prompts him to instantly reprimand his son and inform him that he would be sent back to the United States. Nonetheless, Scene tries to argue with his father. After Scene explained that he was the one who brought about the problem, Scene's father conceded to his son's request that he make the necessary corrections. The following day, Twinkie runs into Scene and inquires about the plan, to which Scene responds by telling Twinkie what it was. Twinkie, who is aware of the issue, makes the decision to provide financial assistance to Scene by way of cash in exchange for the return of the money that was laundered. Scene makes an effort to make amends by going to the Yakuza hideout and appealing to Kamata, repaying the money that Han took, and also proposing to participate in an honor race, which is a duel in which the loser will be banished from the town. Kamata gives his assent, and he decides where the race will take place. When it comes to a mountain pass, Takashi has the upper hand because legend has it that he is the only person who has ever made it down to the bottom without suffering any injuries. After returning to their safe home, Scene, Twinkie, and the rest of Han's crew discovered that it was the subject of a police investigation and that everything within had been seized, including any surviving cars. On the other hand, the wreckage of the Sylvia that Scene had used in the first round of the fight against Takashi was still there, and the engine had not been damaged. They decide to take it, and Scene's dad will do the necessary repairs to his old Ford Mustang. After that, Scene prepares the vehicle for the race by fitting it with the necessary equipment and making any necessary modifications. Scene and Takashi are prepared to compete in the race, which will take place during the night atop the mountain pass. Takashi continues to engage in dirty play for the remainder of the race by repeatedly tackling Scene. Scene was able to absorb the hits and successfully sidestep Takashi, which allowed him to take the lead in the fight. In the closing stages of the competition, Takashi makes one more attempt to knock Scene out, but Scene successfully applies the brakes, sending Takashi careening down the mountain. The race is won by Scene. However, as a result of the collision, Takashi's wrecked 350Z was falling onto the road. Thankfully, Scene is able to narrowly avoid the collision with the crash by drifting. Takashi makes it to the finish line with only a hair's breadth of a chance, but his loss causes him to suffer a humiliating setback at the hands of Scene, who Takashi continues to consider an outsider. Scene is told by Kamata that he is free to depart, and it is assumed that Takashi then leaves Tokyo. Neela is finally able to reunite with Scene after being liberated from the Yakuza. After some time has passed, Scene has risen to the position of Drift King, and he and Neela, who is now his girlfriend, are chilling in the same subterranean parking lot seen earlier in the movie. Scene accepts the offer only after discovering that the opponent obviously knew Han. Twinkie approaches Scene and tells him that someone wants to compete against him. Scene hops in his brand new drift car and drives off in the direction of the unknown competitor, who turns out to be none other than Dominic Toretto. Toretto and Scene have a short talk, during which Toretto reveals that Han enjoyed muscle cars and that he once drove with him. Toretto also tells Scene that the car he is presently driving was one from Han. Toretto was quoted as remarking that he had nothing but time in the race that Scene predicted wouldn't be a 10-second race because Scene was aware of Toretto's reputation. As Neela begins to count down the seconds until the start of the race, both of the vehicles take off and proceed in the same direction for the first straight. Dominic Toretto and his new gang, which consists of Letty, Teiko Leo, Rico Santos, Cara Murtha, and Han Soto, have been on the run for 5 years since escaping from Los Angeles. They are currently robbing petroleum tankers in the Dominican Republic. Dominic has a nagging feeling that the authorities are not far behind them and are keeping a careful eye on them. He does this after Ham informs him that one of his garages has been broken into, at which time he disbands the team. Everyone disperses into their respective new locations with the sole exception of Letty. Dominic, after coming to the realization that he needs to go on with his life, packs his possessions in the middle of the night and decides to abandon Letty in order to protect her from the authorities. He does this in order to protect Letty from being arrested. Dominic has at last found a place to call home in Panama City after an additional 3 months of waiting. During this time, he receives a phone call from his sister, Mia Toretto, who tells him that Letty has passed away as the result of being involved in a car accident. The phone rings when he is there to answer it. Dominic, who is now unable to find solace in anything, returns to Los Angeles in his 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS and witnesses the funeral of Letty from a distance. Later on, he runs across Mia once more, and this time she shows him the location of the crime scene where Letty was killed. He finds remains of nitromethane on the ground while he is investigating the wreckage of Letty's car when he is looking into what happened. Dominic travels to the area's one and only car mechanic who sells nitromethane and is successful in convincing him to disclose information about David Park, the person who placed the order for the fuel. While everything is going on, an FBI agent by the name of Brian O'Connor is looking for a drug lord who goes by the name Arturo Braga. His inquiry also leads him to David Park, and he is able to locate David Park with the help of an illegal modification record on David Park's vehicle. His research also leads him to David Park. Dominic is the first person to arrive at Park's apartment, and as soon as he gets there, he grabs hold of Park's ankles and proceeds to dangle him out of the apartment window. He does this for a few moments before letting go. After being rescued by Bruin, who was on his way to Park's house, Park has now become the latest informant for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. A foot race across the streets of Los Angeles is the challenge that Park issues to Brian. A modified version of a 2002 Nissan Skyline GT RR34 is the vehicle that Brian selects from the impound lot. In addition, Dominic shows up to compete in the race driving a modified Chevelle that he had built for himself. The liaison for Braga, Giselle Yasha, has revealed that the winner will be the last remaining driver on a crew that is responsible for trafficking heroin across the border between Mexico and the United States. Dominic wins the race by jolting Brian's vehicle while it is on nitro, which causes Brian to lose control of his vehicle and allows Dominic to win. Brian uses his position as an FBI agent to frame and then arrest Dwight Mueller, another driver, so that he can take Mueller's place on the team. When the team meets one of Braga's guys named Phoenix Calderon, Dominic notices that Phoenix Calderon drives the exact same Torino that was described by the technician the previous day. This occurs when the crew comes face to face with one of Braga's men. They conceal their automobiles by driving them into underground tunnels near the border in order to avoid being discovered. Brian was already aware of the fact that after the heroin was delivered, Braga would give the order for the drivers to be killed after it was completed. After a tense confrontation, Dominic detonates his vehicle with nitrous oxide in an effort to divert the attention of Braga's men, and Brian gets control of a 1999 Hummer H1 that is carrying heroin with a street value of $60 million. On the other hand, Dominic finds out from Phoenix that he was the one who killed Letty. Dominic and Brian both return to Los Angeles with the intention of concealing the heroin in a storage facility used by the police. After that, Brian purchases a modified 2009 Subaru Impreza, and he and Dominic then travel to Dominic's secret location. Dominic finds out in subsequent years that Brian was the most recent person to contact Letty. This revelation comes as a surprise to Dominic. Dominic strikes Brian until Brian explains that Letty was working undercover for the FBI to track down Braga in exchange for cleaning Dominic's record. Dominic's record was cleared in exchange for Dominic's cooperation with the FBI. After that, Dominic pulls back from his assault on Brian. Brian reveals to his superiors that in exchange for Dominic receiving amnesty, he will put up a snare for Braga, which will need Braga to make a personal appearance in order to trade money for the heroin. Brian's plan requires Braga to swap money for the heroin. At the drop point, it is revealed that the man who claims he is Braga is a decoy, and Campos, the person who is actually Braga, runs away and proceeds to Mexico. Both Brian and Dominic decide to travel to Mexico on their own in order to look for Braga in that country. After finding him in a place of worship, they decide to place him under arrest. Brian and Dominic are making their way back to the United States by way of the underground tunnels as Braga's henchmen are attempting to liberate him. As a result of being shot at by Braga's men, Brian is unable to maintain control of his vehicle and has an accident. After then, he sustains injuries as a result of a T-bone attack that Phoenix delivered to him at the entrance to the tunnel. By knocking over Brian with his automobile, Dominic is able to stop Phoenix from killing Brian. After killing Phoenix, while the police and helicopters approach the collision scene on the American side of the border, Dominic refuses to depart and says that he is tired of fleeing. He does this while the police and helicopters move closer to the area. In spite of Brian's request for clemency, the court decides to give Dominic a sentence that can vary anywhere from 25 years to life in prison. During this time, Brian puts in his resignation from the FBI, while Dominic boards the bus that would take him to Lompoc State Prison. Both of these events are taking place simultaneously. As the bus continues down the road, Brian, Mia, Leo, and Santos all drive up in their respective automobiles in an effort to catch up with it. Dom flashes a grin as he recognizes the sound of his automobile's engine almost immediately, and he waves to Brian, Mia, Leo, and Santos as they pull up.